Hello. Continuing on with looking at an anesthesia sheet that is a grid or a graph. We have another example here. UC Davis has one. And again, if you're handed one of these sheets and you're not familiar with it, find where is the legend or the key. Where are all those symbols that are going to tell you what to write for which vital sign. So if we look here, middle left side, we've got a bunch of different symbols that are going to tell you what the plan is for which vital sign and how to write the symbol with it. After you find where those are, you're going to do a little investigation as you always do. This has pulse and the blood pressures that we're used to, a respiratory rate, and if you're giving any intermittent positive pressure ventilation, and those symbols are all there. But you're missing out on things like where's my temp and my end tidal and so on. So if we go up here, do a little bit more searching, we see SpO2 and end tidal are right there. And then for whatever reason, way down on the bottom here, that's where they put temperature. So once you've found all of those things, then you can start figuring out, okay, well, how would I start recording these things when I need to write them down? And on the last sheets, you remember the keys had like an A for starting anesthesia, and then maybe an @ symbol for ending anesthesia, and so on, so on. This one right here just says straight up, what time are you starting and ending the different things that are happening? So that one is just going to be writing out when things start and end, just as you would on any other sheet. Pretty easy on that. Again, with your sheets, when you're finding your time section, it's very important that you've created an SOP. Are we going to write 0800 hours, meaning we're doing military time, or are we just going to write 8 and then AM next to it to symbolize the more, I guess, layperson writing of time? And it's important to do that because you must be consistent. It must be in an SOP, and everybody has to adhere to which one you are doing. So, usually, I'm a layperson. I'm just going to write in 8 a.m., and then here's 9 a.m., here's 10 a.m., and 11 a.m., and then 12 p.m. And when I'm handed one of these sheets, I start writing all of these things right away. When well, not right away, I shouldn't say that, but shortly after I've given my pre-anesthesia drugs, I'm going to start writing things down to try to prep this sheet so that I can be a little bit more on top of things when it comes time to induce and get things ready. And then let's say we start here, our anesthetic induction, whatever drug that was given at 8:55 a.m. Okay? Then that is where, oh gosh, you know what I'm seeing right now? These are in 15-minute blocks, aren't they? That is interesting. So this one is very different than what most anesthesia sheets that I would be used to or that AHA would recommend. We don't usually do them in 15-minute chunks, but let's explore it anyway. This anesthesia sheet, just because it says an animal ID number, and it says housing, and it says investigator, to me all of that means that this is a research-related sheet. And so their protocol for doing research clearly states that every 15 minutes they're going to be recording something. So that's a very interesting way of having a sheet done. But for most people, most hospitals, general hospitals, even in ER, this probably wouldn't be used. We like to have it every 5 minutes. But the symbols aren't quite that different. If you see your monitor telling you that your systolic is here, and your mean is here, and your diastolic is here, you're going to write those in. Same as always. Our pulse, that's still a dark black circle filled in, versus the respiratory rate is an open circle. All right, so we know all of that. We've seen that before. And then where do the other bits go? SpO2 and end tidal over here. So SpO2, we can just write that in. End tidal, we can write that in. Most people within the United States know that we do SpO2 in percent and end tidals in millimeters of mercury. So I don't think it's necessary that you would have to write those. However, just for clarity, it's never a bad idea to put those in on your sheet so that it is, again, very, very clear how you are recording these things. Some things are written in like KPAs instead of millimeters of mercury. It depends on what country, and it depends on, I suppose, even if the procedure in a research facility would prefer KPAs. So again, a lot of this stuff is doing a little bit of background on how you're going to use the sheet and having your SOPs written up. But as you can see, this isn't terribly different than what we've already seen. If we go down here, our fluids and our temperature. So our fluids in mils, let's say we're doing 90 mils per hour, and it's going to be norm R. And then we're going to say we're doing our temperature in Fahrenheit. So as we're doing this, we can say this is 90, and this is 90, and this is 90, and this is 90. And you just keep going along. They may even use this sheet to state that the top one here is for writing in the mils an hour that you've decided. And then this bottom box down here, excuse me, is going to be what is the total volume infused over 15 minutes. So I'm giving this dog 90 mils an hour, and in the first 15 minutes, we've hit 15. And over here, maybe we hit 45. And maybe over here, we keep doing that. It's important to, again, have that kind of written out in an SOP. And everybody on the staff is doing the same thing. And then temperature down here, same as always. You're just writing in the temp. And you can see the handwriting has to get pretty small. So if you have an electronic sheet like this, it's nice to just increase, write it in, and then you can go back down to size, and it still shows up legibly in there. Otherwise, you're going to need to find yourself a pen that has a ultra fine or fine tip on it, usually a 0.3 to a 0.5 would be highly recommended. And again, on any legal document, which this is a legal document, it has to be either black ink or legal blue, as they call it. So think of your standard Bic pen in blue. That is your standard legal blue. On this sheet, as you can see, this is as good as I can get. I wouldn't have a clue what standard legal blue would look like on an electronic sheet, so I wouldn't even try to mess with colors and hope that I could find something that's definitely not it. So I wouldn't bother with that. All right, and then if we look at the rest of the sheet, pretty self-explanatory. You've seen it before. Pre-anesthetic drugs here. If we're going to give any antibiotics here. Anesthesia induction, excuse me. And then analgesics. Let's say there needs to be rescue analgesics anticipated, like morphine or hydro or fentanyl, because they may have breakthrough pain, and maybe you gave some morphine as a pre-anesthetic, but we are going to anticipate at some point in the procedure, let's say you're using this sheet, say for a TPLO, and you're just going to plan on, as the doctor is cutting through the bone, you kind of already know that's a painful part, so you have it anticipated and ready to give more. And that's where I would write these extra pieces here for analgesics. All right, so that's that sheet. And then let's look at, this sheet is by Detra. I can't say it. I have no idea if this is how they pronounce it, but Detra. That's how I say it. Doesn't really matter as long as you can spell it, right? So this one isn't one sheet as we've seen. They have multiple sheets. This first sheet is really to work up your patient. So this is going to be filling it out like we always do. Not a big deal up on top. Your vet, your nurse. The United States may not like it saying nurse. You may have to change that to LVT, CVT, RVT, what have you, or just write technician. And then it's got your ASA. That's really nice to have on your sheet, indicating how healthy or unhealthy is this animal going into the procedure. And again, this is very much a workup sheet because it's going to ask for clinical relevant history. So maybe it's a right CCL partial tear, and we're going to go repair that. And that's the clinical reason that you would go in and do this. Ongoing treatments or medications. He's been on carprofen, 50 mg, BID, times the last, 15 days, what have you. And that helps tell everybody on the staff, if he's already on carprofen and he probably got it the morning of, let's not overdose, let's not give an injection during surgery, right? And then you just keep going down that sheet. You can see it's not terribly different than what you're used to, I'm sure. But now we get to the grid part. Here's that grid part. All right. So now we have to find our key or our legend or our graph symbols, whatever they're calling it. And these guys kind of hit it in a corner. This is where their graph symbols are. So if I make this larger, you can see these guys have done it a little bit different. The SAP is an up caret, the MAP is a down caret, and the DAP, the diastolic, is a line. That's very different than what we've seen in the other sheets. That's okay. Again, that's what you do when you are handed one of these sheets. Any facility may have any type of sheet they want. Hopefully they're keeping them consistent. And if you're going to pick a sheet like this, find one that makes sense for your people and your staff, but then keep it consistent. If you get a brand new job and you get handed a sheet, find these bits first. My pen is failing. There we go. And figure out where are my symbols. Okay? And then you're going to look elsewhere for the other part of symbols, because you can see over here where my symbols are, it doesn't say anything about SPO2, doesn't say anything about end tidal, it doesn't say anything about assisted ventilation or spontaneous ventilation if you're going to have a differentiation of symbols for those type of things. Okay? So ISO and SIVO, you're going to circle, I'm sure, which one you're using. I like to cross out the other one, put my initials next to it, just so there's no confusion. And then oxygen, liters per minute. We know that nitrous oxide. Now here's a change. If I'm not going to use nitrous oxide, I just simply don't write anything in these lines. I leave it blank. The reason I chose up here to do this and cross out this is because this whole line has two different things connected to it. So I am choosing how to represent this line here. But oxygen has its own line, nitrous has its own line. To me, that states I'm just going to use this oxygen line and fill in 1, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, as you do, and I leave nitrous oxide blank. Again, if you want to be very specific, nothing wrong with that, cross it out. Put your initials next to it. There you go. Now we have a MMHG over here. I've seen this on some before. How I have used this and others have interpreted this, I suppose, and forgive me, Detra is an international company, so I could be very wrong on this, but here what I've seen is that we write in Doppler, because that's what we're going to use, and the Doppler really only represents one number. So we would just have to write in what that one number is that we're getting every time we get a number, right? And that's how you can use that line. SpO2, we already know that. That stays the same. There's no mystery in how SpO2 works. Temperature, we get that. But again, they're using this one line to represent either Celsius or Fahrenheit. So, again, because I have the luxury of a tablet, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, I'm using Fahrenheit. I'm crossing off Celsius. And then I can go back down. And then I can start writing in what my numbers are as we go along. And then they've got a couple of blank lines for you to add things. And so I'm going to say, well, gosh, that's nice, but what do I need to add? Well, if we look at our line of key or legend, that doesn't have any end title in it, and this chunk doesn't have any end title in it. Therefore, I would like this to be end title CO2, and I'll have that in there. Or what I should really do, because look at how specific they got. SpO2 with a percent next to it, right? And on that last sheet, it just said SpO2 EtCO2, and it did not have its unit next to it. So I'm going to be very specific because this page would like us to be very specific. Love it. I'm going to follow that example. And then as the vital signs show up, I'm going to start writing them down, just like we always do. And now we go over to our grid. So systolic, this is going to be a change from what you've seen, is going to have that caret pointing to the number closest to where I can get the tip of that caret. And let's say you're trying to make the argument, I can't possibly show the difference between 142 systolic and 143 systolic on this grid. And I agree with you, you really can't. But the point of a grid system like this, or a graph system, is that you are creating a graph and you're watching trends. So let's say my systolic starts doing this. Okay, well that's not terribly significant yet, because I'm still at a systolic of about 100 right there. But gosh darn it, if it doesn't start doing this nonsense, a systolic of 70, well, that tells me some pretty significant event happened, and I'm watching this trend go down. And it's very visual. It's very easy to read. That's why a lot of people like this sheet. And they're going to use it in that manner. So now we're taking our systolic. Our map is going to be a caret downward. Again, trying to hit these peaks on the number that the vital sign is reading on your monitor. And then your diastolic is a line. And that's what that would look like. Your heart rate is an X. And again, that X where it crosses, that is what you're going to try to get the number on as accurately as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, because we're watching a trend. We're watching this heart rate all of a sudden spike, and we go, ooh, what does that mean? Does that mean there was pain? Does that mean I was trying to wake him up? I stopped anesthesia. He woke up and his heart rate went shabam. Whatever it's doing, it can tell us a story. And then respiratory rate for this one, it's a solid circle. Solid circle. So a little bit different than the other sheets we have seen. But it's still, first and foremost, you're always going to look at what your legend is. That never changes. Find the legend, read it, what pieces are not being represented by symbols, and then figure out where are those extra pieces. Where did they put those on the sheet? Now this sheet, like some of the other ones, has intraoperative events down on the bottom. So just like before, we would be able to say 1. And on this one, because the legend doesn't tell us that here, A started here, anesthesia, and then here's a circle that states surgery started here. We don't have any symbols like that. So I'm going to say number 1, this is start anesthesia. And then over here, after we're done prepping, 2 is start surgery. Or procedure, or whatever you want to say. And you can write it like that. Let's say we've got event number 3. And we have suddenly severe hypotension. Severe hypotension would suggest we need to do something about it, right? So you can finish that sentence, add in dobutamine at 2.5 mic per kg per minute, or however you're going to tackle that severe hypotension. And you can write all of that in your intraoperative events line. And, just make that function and work out. Now, post-operative instructions, we all know that one, right? He wakes up, he needs more pain meds, or the animal wakes up and they're really dysphoric, and maybe they need a bump of dexdomitor or acepromazine, or they just need a bump of propofol to sleep it off just for a few more minutes. All of that is down there. Okay? So that's what that sheet looks like. Little bit different than some of the others, but again, kind of the same concept. You get handed a sheet like this, you don't have to panic. You're going to first find where all these symbols are. What do they look like? And then if you don't have symbols representing vital signs, you look for where are other vital signs represented in words where you can write in numbers. Okay, thank you.